This episode of Lately is brought to you by the Kia EV9, the full-size SUV with all-electric power. The Kia EV9 redefines the SUV with all-electric power and innovation. With its customizable digital grille, 3 rows of seating, and 800-volt ultra-fast charging, the EV9 is the first of its kind. Learn more at kia.ca/EV9.
Hello, Vass.
Hey, Katrina.
How is your rug?
Man, I don't have a rug.
It's not what I read.
Oh, the rug that never was.
The rug that never. Tell us about your now notorious rug review, please.
A colleague of mine at work messaged me, letting me know that she recently purchased a rug from a company, and she noticed that it seemed like I had reviewed this very same rug. So that was cool. Kind of seemed like it persuaded her to make the purchase. The only thing is, it was a verified review, but it wasn't written by me. So
It's so creepy.
It is creepy. But it got me thinking about just how polluted that review landscape can be. My worry was that the website was somehow populating the reviews with names of people kind of in her network or that are familiar to her, because it kind of, again, might prompt the very same purchase that she had. But yeah, I haven't purchased a rug in a while.
Yeah, well, this feels like next level review fraud now if you're actually seeing your own name pop up in fake reviews.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm Vass Bednar. I'm the host of Lately, and that's why I'm talking about this person that may or may not have purchased a rug that they seem genuinely happy with.
Well, I'm glad that this imaginary person loves the rug that you didn't buy. I'm Katrina Onstad. I'm the producer of Lately, and this week we're going to be talking about the crazy, broken, wild review economy.
Yeah, that's what it got me thinking about. How did a system that's hyper-democratic, based on the promise of our peers, right? Kind of crowdsourcing, wisdom of crowds vibes become so polluted and exploited. And at the same time, we all kind of know it sucks, but we still read the reviews.
We all participate. You're talking about the review economy, but you could be talking about the internet itself.
Could be.
Speaking of broken promises. But yeah, when we started looking into it, we found that the scope of fakery in the review economy is massive, right? Amazon said that it had blocked more than 200 million suspected fake reviews last year. And the World Economic Forum put a number on this and said that the direct influence of fake online reviews on global online spending is $152 billion. So this is the stakes are really high. It's a lot of fake rugs. But it's not only rugs, right? This is the part of this that's alarming. We're not just talking about toilet brushes and rugs.
No.
There's high stakes fakery going on involving doctors and lawyers and contractors. There was a case in New York last year of a doctor who was fined $100,000 by the state for embellishing reviews. I really don't want to think of my doctor going on there and making themselves seem better at their job than they are.
Also weaponizing reviews, right? How fandoms or political groups can seek to punish employers, businesses, creators. A book may not have come out yet.
Yeah.
A film may just be coming out, and there's a kind of coordinated effort to give it 1 star, which will depreciate where it shows up in search or lower its score on aggregators like Rotten Tomatoes. So it's intended to financially hurt a firm.
Well, it seems like it's now reached a bit of a inflection point, right? That this problem is becoming too hard to ignore by both big tech and regulators. So we've seen in the last year or so a few indicators that maybe there's going to be an attack or a pushback on the fake review economy.
Yeah, in that way, the reviews are in and they don't look good, right? So there's sort of a consensus that this is less of a private problem, that we each have to navigate privately and silently, kind of sifting and sorting through, adding browser plugins and doing tons of quote unquote research or Googling. Different legislators are taking particular approaches, and also companies are being more explicit about what they're doing to fight and remove bad reviews on their site, partially because, of course, they need to maintain or at least restore some of that trust that is lost when you get duped or spend more money than you want to or make a bad purchase decision because you had bad information.
But we'll see, right? I mean, they've had a lot of years to correct this course. And, so far, self-policing has not been a strong suit of big tech. So it's interesting. We're seeing like the Competition Bureau of Canada issuing a warning and actually issuing a fine to a small company last year who had generated out of Montreal fake positive reviews from third parties. And we're seeing the FTC in the States making noises about legislation. So maybe now we're going to change course. I don't know.
I think it's a big maybe, but it's a cool one because it's kind of a test of policing the internet and content to say that these online spaces may be liable for what is false and deceiving, right? This is ultimate deception, right? Mm-hmm. Bad information, incorrect information on their site, or is it just the people or entities that are posting them?
That's how it feels, right? Like you do feel deceived.
What did you buy?
I bought some compression packing cubes.
Okay.
Rip-a-rama, despite the 5-star reviews. And you kind of know going in, right? You can just sort of sense it smells bad. There's 8,000 of the same item, all of which get 5-star reviews. And so you just close your eyes, hold your nose, and click, right? And then they rip.
Yeah. But you didn't write a review about that they ripped. So you kind of didn't pay it forward there. Again, this whole system is completely based on voluntary labor, which is also something that interests me, this idea that every purchase that I make could be an opportunity for me to take time away from something else and critique it. For what? This imagined greater good that someone else might purchase this and get as much joy from like a Tupperware or...
That's the best version of it, though, right? Is that you are helping somebody else, like peer-to-peer over the garden fence with your neighbor, that exchange of information. But what it often feels like is that you're being enlisted to do unpaid labor as a marketer for a company that you don't really care about. So get out of my inbox because I'm not going to review those compression bags that I just bought yesterday.
Yeah.
So who do we want to talk to about this?
We want to talk to Professor Joseph Riegel. He's at Northwestern University, and he wrote a book called Reading the Comments, which is all about how we assert our voice online in ways big and small. So it's not just about reviews, but he's somebody who's been thinking for a long time now, quite carefully and critically, about what it means to engage in reviews and where we could be going. So I'm pretty excited.
Are we going to encourage our listeners to review this episode?
We are not going to encourage people to review it. We hope that we created an episode that people will like and that they'll feel inclined to share. But I don't want to compel anyone to like go that extra mile and sit and write a review.
I want to compel them. And if they don't, we're going to hire bots.
We already hired bots. This is Lately. All right, let's get started. Our guest, Dr. Joseph Riegel, has locked his dog in the washroom so that we can have a quiet conversation. We're going to find out how long the dog lasts in there. Hello, Joseph. Tell us, how did you get interested in online reviews?
I'm a habitual comment reader. And one of the things I realize is I'm what a social scientist calls, though I don't often say it correctly, a maxifisser, which means that I want to find out the best way to do things and I want to optimize things. And so when I'm buying something, I had a colleague once who said, I will just ask Joseph what to buy because it's going to save me hours of work. And in some ways, I enjoy reading the comments and look at the ratings and reviews and creating spreadsheets and trying to optimize the best thing. In other ways, I realize it's kind of an illness and it drives me a little bit nuts. Online comments and reviews in particular are like catnip to me. And I started reading them and posting them as soon as I could. And I just became fascinated with it as not only a place to become more informed, but the culture of it, the dynamics of it, and the weirdnesses of it, as well as the manipulations and the abuses of it. And I talked about all of those things in that book.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the weirdness that you see? I'm so fascinated that you don't turn away from reviews, that they are sort of magnetic to you.
There's a whole culture, particularly on Amazon, like 15 years ago, of people writing funny reviews. George Takei, Mr. Sulu of Star Trek has participated in some of those, and they're just an interesting view into some of the things that people are fascinated with and preoccupied with or making fun with. So I don't know if you remember that sort of meme with the three wolves howling at the moon. There was this t-shirt.
I bought that shirt.
Oh, you had one, right?
Yeah.
Did you read the reviews?
100%. So this is a circa 2008, 2009 iconic internet meme before memes existed. And it's just a casual t-shirt with a picture of three wolves howling at the moon. But people started having so much fun in the Amazon reviews, it almost became like a message board where people would kind of try to one-up each other with their purported review of this shirt, talking about how powerful it made them, insinuating that it turned them into a wolf, and just that this, again, casual t-shirt called the Mountain Three Wolf Moon short sleeve tee was actually completely transformative. And it was just a really fun kind of playful moment on the internet.
Yeah, people were like wearing this review. And sometimes the reviews are perplexing and bemusing, but in a more significant way. So one of my favorite reviews was someone posted a review for a smoke detector and a carbon monoxide detector. And it said, like, saved my son's life, 4 out of 5 stars. And that then prompts the question of, well, what do these stars mean? What do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars mean? And you can take that from a psychological perspective. You can take it from a cultural perspective. And I liken some of that to even the medical field. Like when you go see a doctor and they say, rate your pain on a 1 to 10 scale, what does that mean? And there are all these different scales, apparently, when I looked into it. There's scales that are more relevant for children. There's scales that are more relevant to maybe senior citizens. Do you show little pictograms? Do you show smiley and frowny faces? So a lot of the weirdness that we see on the internet actually has a lot of social science and culture behind it as well, which I find fascinating.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the psychology behind our faith in reviews? What hold do they still have over us, whether we're writing or reading them?
Yeah, well, I think there are people like myself who just love reviews and want to be informed. The reason they're so important and why they are now a billion-dollar industry is because one of the challenges of early internet commerce back in the 90s was most of us at that time could walk into a store and try on a shoe. And when commerce went online, there was this problem that economists call the information asymmetry. So one party to the transaction has a lot more information about that product than another party. And how do you overcome that information asymmetry? Well, you can give really good return policies, and we've seen Amazon do that over time, but you can also allow and permit consumer reviews. And that was one of the things that was supposed to bridge that gap about people being uncertain what to buy online. Eventually, people said, okay, I now have a couple of merchants I can trust online. And that was really the first issue. But the second issue is, even if I trust the merchant, how do I know this is a product that I can benefit from and value? That's what reviews were supposed to do, along with really good return policies. And that's why they're now as big as a business as they are, and why we see so much scam and fraud and fakery.
To the point of fraud and fakery, the FTC had recently made an assessment that if they could fight fake reviews, it could increase consumer welfare by as much as $15 billion. It's a big number. How important is an online review to a business itself?
It could be huge. Obviously, just intuitively, if you get hammered with a bunch of really negative reviews, particularly if you're, say, a restaurant and they're casting aspersions on your cleanliness or your health, that can be significant. Some economists have actually tried to quantify this to some extent to try to figure out, like, well, how much was that fraction of a star worth in terms of revenue and sales and restaurant bookings. And it is significant, and I think it's become even more significant over time. I mean, this is one of the problems when you have a marketplace that becomes infected with scams and fraud, is if you're an honest restaurant, how can you even compete when it only takes one bad competitor to be leaving bad reviews on you and puffing themselves up? So it's a systemic issue, and I'm glad the FTC is trying to take some action on this. For example, they recently issued a proposal about some things they could do to crack down on the sale and purchasing of fake reviews. But that law, for example, if it goes into effect, wouldn't affect third-party review sites like Yelp and Google. And there's also plenty of fraud and fakery on Yelp and Google as well. So in the United States, the regulatory context has been kind of patchwork. I'm not sure about Canada myself. Sorry.
Hey, you said sorry, which is a Canadian word, but I do know that Canada's Competition Bureau, it recently issued a warning. So they sent a flare out to companies using employees to post fake reviews. So it does seem like our institutions are recognizing the problem of fake reviews or just how reviews can be weaponized. Sometimes a review, as you touch on as well, is so inauthentic, it's intended to be punitive, to punish a restaurant that took a particular position during the pandemic or wanted people to wear masks or has a particular ownership. This is a way the feedback system is kind of hijacked. There's been a politicizing of reviews, and I wondered why you pointed to the past 10 years. Is that about the increasing digitization of the economy, that a company has to participate in that exchange or solicitation of feedback because it's important for search engine optimization? Are reviews just an expectation now?
I think they are. I think that's right. If you're not participating, if you're not on Yelp, if you don't have a Google review page, if you don't have social media accounts where people can say nice things about you, your business is going to suffer significantly. Every once in a while, there's the interesting exception where someone says, I'm being manipulated or abused online. Maybe they can go to a local news source, or maybe they make a game of it. Like there was a restaurant that said, we only want 1-star reviews. And they made fun with it, and they got lots of 1-star reviews, and they got a lot of positive attention because of that. And in their very unique and novel circumstance, they could manage, but most businesses can't do that.
Could you tell us a little bit more about all the different places fake reviews could come from?
They can come from most anywhere. Some of the largest spaces, they have cracked down on a little bit. But, there's websites where you can hire someone in the neighborhood maybe to rake your leaves, like Fiverr or TaskRabbit. You used to be able to find lots of people offering or wanting to buy fake reviews on those websites. There are things known as like Instagram pods. So if you're an influencer and you want people to like or
subscribe or something,
promote your particular posts or subscribe, like for like used to be an old saying back in the Twitter days, whereas if you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back sort of thing. There are lots of places. They're not that furtive. They're not necessarily on the dark net. Really, all you have to do is find a Facebook group. And to be a little bit sympathetic to the platforms, though I've also been somewhat critical, it really is a game of whack-a-mole where, you take down 100 Facebook groups that were doing this sort of thing, and people just find another set of Facebook groups or they move to another platform where the issue hasn't become as pronounced. And keeping up with all of that is a real challenge. But just the reviews for things like, I wrote a new book. Could you write some good reviews on that book? And I'll pay you $10 or $15. When I looked at it like 10 years ago, that's about kind of what it went for a decent quality review. I don't mean 5-star. I mean, it looked like a good review. It looked authentic. That's not going to go away. And it makes sense to chase them and try to do what we can, but it is a game of whack-a-mole.
Well, sometimes whack-a-mole can be fun and productive. We could be optimistic about whack-a-mole. This episode of Lately is brought to you by the Kia EV9, the full-size SUV with all-electric power. How do you redefine the SUV? You go electric with the Kia EV9. It has an unmistakable presence with its bold design and customizable digital grille. And there's room for everyone, with 3 full-size rows that seat up to 7. And it's road trip ready, with 800-volt ultra-fast charging and up to 5,000 pounds of towing capacity. The Kia EV9 is the first of its kind, and recent winner of the 2024 North American Utility Vehicle of the Year. Build yours today at kia.ca/EV9. Have you been able to observe who's being hit the hardest by the growth of fake or weaponized reviews? Who are the winners and losers?
I think it's particularly difficult for small business owners because they're not as capable and don't have the same momentum to buffet the torrent that might befall them when someone starts harassing them online with negative reviews. And then in terms of books and movies, there's that practice known as astroturfing. So for some particular reason, perhaps it's ideological, like there was a Michael Jackson biography that came out that fans didn't like, and they started leaving very bad reviews on that. Young adult fiction authors is a very politicized, oddly enough, space where people can leave really bad reviews for one another. Goodreads became a battleground in a number of these cases because one of the things they did is they created a feature where you could create lists of books that you might be interested in. And you could have as many lists as you wanted. But then some people created lists of books they would never read. And authors found themselves on that list and it became the source of a significant controversy at the time.
Well, and Goodreads was later acquired by Amazon. And in your book, when you kind of take us back to the early promise of the feedback economy, hyper-democratized, hearing from peers, these authentic, playful, crisp online forms of writing, Amazon in the beginning, you share through your research, actually paid book reviewers. Given that Amazon was willing to invest in paid reviewers to build trust with their firm initially, how could or should the review economy change through firm investments if they need to rebuild trust, given all the fakery, bots, and spam that we currently see?
That's an interesting question. And even if Amazon in its very earliest of days had a couple of dozen book reviewers on hand, it's difficult to imagine, given the scale of e-commerce today, how you might have something similar such that you didn't need crowdsourced reviews. And there is often this moment when we look at the digital age where something first arises and people are really excited and they can share information and they can share their enthusiasm. And there's places where you can read really good in-depth reviews of things. But one of the sad consequences of the success of the online space, including the marketplace, is then it goes from what I call intimate serendipity, bumping into wonderful things into a sort of filtered sludge. Because people now see this is a place where I can scam folks. This is a place where I can make money. And it's challenging because I would like to think it would be in the interest of places like Yelp and Amazon to improve the quality of the reviews that appear on their sites. And they say they are interested in that, and they do sometimes take actions, but I wouldn't think it's their biggest concern. Their biggest concern originally was growth, and then it was monetization. In the United States, there's a law called the Communication Decency Act, and there's a section called Section 230. And Section 230 said, platforms are not responsible for the content that is posted on their platforms. And so that meant that even if they chose to moderate maybe some of the most egregious stuff, they still wouldn't be liable for the content that is posted. For instance, if someone is faking a review. And that really allowed the digital economy and the platforms to flourish and grow over the years. But we are now at a point for a number of reasons where Section 230 and this notion of platforms shouldn't be responsible for the content that is on the platforms is being questioned. And you mentioned the FTC, they're now thinking about, can we take more action on this front? But I mentioned it doesn't apply to Google reviews, to Yelp reviews, and some of these third-party review websites because they will make a 230 claim. They will say, we are not responsible for the fake reviews that are being pasted on our platform. What the FTC seems to be doing is they do want to and seem to have some capacity to say, look, if you're actually selling fake reviews, if you're buying fake reviews, then we think we might be able to take an action against you. And they have taken some ad hoc actions in the past, and they would like to reinforce that by way of a much more explicit rule. But it's still not quite what we might need to really address this issue. And going way back to your original question, like how much should companies spend to do this? I don't know, but I think it would be a significant investment. I don't know if they want to make that investment. Moderation for these large platforms in general is also an issue, just with, say, hate speech or harassment. That hasn't had an easy solution. Originally, a lot of that work was outsourced to countries with lower cost of living and lower expenses to the companies. Interestingly, that's where a lot of the fake reviews are now coming from in places like Bangladesh and India. So it's now a global phenomenon. And I think of late, the tech companies have been really hoping that maybe artificial intelligence would allow them to solve this in some way.
Right. I had noticed some commentary online around generative AI and how some platforms may want to use them with reviews. Google has shared it took down 45% more fake reviews in 2023 thanks to a new algorithm. You have to also imagine that bots, farms, actors that engage in fake reviews try to learn the confines of those algorithmic systems so they can contort themselves around them. And of course, I wanted to add a somewhat recent announcement that there's a consortium, seems to be US-based, right, calling itself the Coalition for Trusted Reviews, which unites Amazon, Booking.com, Expedia, Glassdoor, TripAdvisor, and a firm called Trustpilot in aiming to stop fake reviews at the source. I love that you brought up Section 230 and how our ideas of the best way to govern our online world, our online marketplaces, has shifted, and that we expect more accountability from these platforms. Do you feel like this policy attention, coupled with the technological advances to kind of be more precise or detect fakery, is a turning point, or is it just another chapter in how our participation in online trust systems is evolving?
You do have to be careful. So, for example, one of the marketing organizations in their statement during their recent FTC informal hearings said something like, look, if you make merchants liable for fake reviews, they won't even provide reviews at all. And is that what you want? And that's a good and a genuine question. So I would like to think in the United States we're maybe moving in a positive direction. I think I would like to see these proposals about the FTC being able to be more explicit and direct on issues of people explicitly selling and buying fake reviews. I think that would be a good thing, but I've been around long enough to know that things can always change in the next 3 or 4 years, and who knows what things will look like then.
Well, can you imagine a world without reviews? Maybe this whole grand experiment of their review economy will fizzle or float away and we'll substitute it with something better. But should we?
No, I think there'll always be comments, and I think there'll always be reviews, which are basically comments telling us what someone thinks about a particular review or service. How useful they are, how overrun they are with nonsense and scammery, I think that is the big open question. And one of the things when you do look at the internet over the decades, sometimes I use the word churn, but you see various services and various mediums and platforms come. And one of the ways you see this churn is with respect to authenticity. So, for example, there were lots of websites that came along and said, this is the place where you can be your authentic self. It was Facebook, and then it was Instagram, and then there was an app a couple of years ago called Be Real.
Right.
And it randomly pinged you at a certain time of the day, everyone, and that's when you had to take a photo. But of course, they came up with mechanisms by which you could delay taking the photo. And now if you take the photo now, you'll have a couple more opportunities later in the day to take the photo. And of course, Be Real needs to monetize. They need to make some money. So they've been making deals and connections with various influencers and brands. And at some point, Be Real will probably be understood as not a very authentic place, and there'll be yet another platform. So that churn of us always looking for the latest way to find authentic content, including reviews, is just going to keep happening. Maybe some of it will be more genuine and honest than otherwise, but that cyclic churn is definitely a feature of the internet that's not going to go away.
Well, to your point around honesty, there's a universe to look at online reviews as commentary that's kind of a form of citizenship in the online economy, right? For the people who are posting those authentic reviews that we're looking for, they're doing a huge public service for the greater good. We opened by you sharing how engaged you are in the comment kind of ecosystem. Can you tell me a little bit about a recent review that you posted?
Oh, so I, like many people, have been very curious about the website Temu. It's a Chinese service that is spending a lot of money, and they're trying to break into the American market, and they're competing with Amazon. And there's a couple of really interesting things about the website. One is they're spending a lot of money to acquire US customers. So I've heard it that they're losing $7 per purchase, basically, right now.
Wow.
In their move to acquire customers. The other thing is that it's extremely gamified. So you go on the website and there's a spinning wheel and maybe you get a $100 coupon and all the things that psychologists have learned about how to addict people to gambling machines and online apps. You will see there. There's things blinking saying there's only 5 of these products left. So it's very sticky, very kind of addictive. And there are also a lot of reviews on the website. For some products that I can find both on Amazon and on Temu, and Temu is typically half the cost. If it's cheap Chinese stuff and you don't mind waiting 7 days, Temu is the place to go. But they have tons of reviews. And from what I could see, they were all 5 stars and they were all really simple, stupid little reviews. And you couldn't click on the reviewers and see kind of what else they were up to. So I was just really curious, is this legitimate or is this all just a farce? So I did buy a raincoat for my dog.
There we go.
And it was like $40 on Amazon and $20 on Temu. And it was originally too small. And I bought a couple other products there. So I did want to leave some reviews of some of the products, like a bath mat that didn't take to washing very well. I left, I think, a 2-star review on that one. And I was curious where it would show up in the history and if it would show up at all. I was surprised to see that my 1- and 2-star reviews did show up on Temu. And I just checked before we spoke and they're still there, which I'm doubly surprised. And they're at the top of the list. So I still can't figure out why so many of the reviews are 5 stars. And I haven't heard Temu at least saying anything about if they care about their reviews and whether there's a lot of fakery or whether people are buying reviews there or not. But it's interesting to look at. And that's where I posted some recent reviews on a bath mat and a mirror that you could have in your shower. But it was really just a little thin piece of paper almost that was mirrored.
What?
Yeah, it wasn't very good. But it cost 67 cents. So,
Worth the 7-day wait. Our whole conversation together is kind of reviewing the feedback economy and kicking the tires on it. What review would you leave for this system if you had to help somebody who was trying to decide whether they should believe in reviews at all?
Take it with a very big spoon of salt. That would be the short of it.
Rock on. Thank you. And I hope your dog had a good time in the washroom.
Yeah, got to go rescue her.
You got to go rescue her. And I hope she enjoys her beautiful new raincoat. I didn't hear the review on that, but I'm glad to know she has one.
Actually, the raincoat was good.
The raincoat was good?
The raincoat is good.
Okay. You've been listening to Lately, a Globe and Mail podcast. Our executive producer is Katrina Onstad. The show is produced by Andrea Varsany, and our sound designer is Cameron McIver. I'm your host, Vass Bednar. And in our show notes, you can subscribe to the Lately newsletter, where we unpack a little more of the latest in business and technology. A new episode of Lately comes out every Friday, wherever you get your podcasts.